Hello, welcome to the channel. This video is one in a series of videos that I'm creating about a Polypay breed study. I'll be showing you all the different yarns that I made from the Polypay fiber that I received from the Guild through a breed study that we're doing, which is a benefit of membership with the Guild. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I'm with Whispering Pines Farm. My husband and I raise a beautiful flock of soft Shetland sheep. I'm also an authorized Majacraft dealer, so I carry all their wheels and fiber prep equipment here on the farm in Western New York. This channel is all about what it's like to live on a farm where we raise sheep for their wool. So in this channel, you're going to find content about sheep, farming, hand spinning, processing wool, fiber, breeding for wool quality, as well as just country living in general. So with this breed study, the one thing I have to confess is that I'm way behind everybody else in the Guild. I think that we got these Polypay samples about 6 months ago, and there was a meeting where everyone presented their finished items and their yarns and just progress in general, and talked a little bit about their impressions of the fiber. But what happened here is just all sorts of stuff with the farm, with fiber festivals. I can't even tell you all the stuff that's been going on. So I fell behind, but I'm picking it back up now. Well, yeah, because a lot of the time I've been spending preparing fiber for festivals because I like to have a good assortment of wool for hand spinners when they come into our booth. But I'm going to continue to soldier on at my pace and not really be distracted by that. And I have made quite a bit of progress on the Polypay study. Like I said, there is a full series of videos that precede this video here, and they're about the breed. I interviewed a couple of people that raise Polypays just to kind of get their impression of the breed. And I'll tell you, the main thing I learned is that they're not really breeding for wool. This is a breed that is a meat breed, and the thing that differentiates the Polypay from other sheep is that they're so prolific. They have tons of lambs and they cycle more frequently than other breeds. So it's about production. It's about being profitable raising sheep for meat. So that's what the Polypay in general is about. And I go into a lot of detail about the breed with the breeders, so I'm not going to do that here. You can watch that video. So I came up with a method, which I have talk about that in another video, but I tried to make it very objective so that I could get actual data about the fiber. So this is not going to be me saying I liked or disliked this fiber. It's going to be me attempting to the best of my ability to describe the experience of processing and spinning a small sample of Polypay fiber. And this is where I want to stop and talk about breed studies. I have a perspective because I have a flock of sheep that I raise, and I go through their fleeces every year. We try to get a uniform fleece on every ewe, every ram, every sheep that we have on the farm. But we don't. It's just, just like human beings, they're all Shetland sheep, but they're going to all be a little bit different in their own way. So I could take two fleeces out of my flock that are on opposite ends of whatever spectrum, whether it's fineness, crimp, length, whatever. But I could take two fleeces and you could pull a sample from one or the other and if you tried to draw conclusions about the breed just from that sample, you're going to go down the wrong road. So what I want to say about breed studies is if you're doing one, or if you're following somebody doing a breed study and they're drawing conclusions about that breed, I'm going to ask you to exhibit a good amount of caution and to maybe look for more resources. Or if you are interested in a particular breed, after doing a study on that breed, dig deeper, do a deeper dive, reach out to other breeders. There's always going to be more than one breeder for a breed, and many of them are very talkative and proud of their flock and like to share information. So just, caution. But this is a data point that I'm really happy to share with you guys about my experience with that one sample that I got as part of membership with the Genesee Valley Handspinners Guild. And before I go any further, I also want to say that I really appreciate, the volunteer hours that go into this study. So this is actually a benefit of membership in the Guild, which I think the Guild is like $35 a year to be a member. And I mean, they source the fleeces, they have a budget, they do a nice write-up. There's just a lot of man hours that go into the prep so that I can take my little baggie of wool and my little sheet that describes the breed home and do what I want to do. So it's pretty awesome that they're doing that. You can buy breed studies from people, and they're pretty expensive if you wanted to do a good assortment of breeds. All right, so that's the thing. I'm not going to be saying at any point in these videos that I like this or I dislike that about this particular breed. What I am going to be doing is observing, and because I know how to evaluate a fleece, I'm going to talk about, the crimp, the length, the waist. That's a huge thing, the yield. I'm going to talk a lot about that. So I'm going to be sending a sample out for micron testing. So I'm going to be, this is going to be pretty sharing of data, not subjective. So the other thing, just quick about the Polypay wool. So there's 4 breeds. It's a new breed that has been created here in the States for the reason I already described, the prolificacy. And what I learned in one of my interviews is that any particular Polypay breeder can have really different wool quality that could be geared more towards one of those 4 breeds than another. All right, so I want to talk about my results for a minute. So what I did is, this is going to be my method. I took a sample of the fleece that I got from the Guild study, and this is it. Set this aside. This will be what I send to Texas A&M for micron testing, and I'm going to do that after I get 5 samples of different breeds, just because it's not economical to just do 1. I think it's like 5 before you cover all your fixed costs for the testing. So once I get 5 of these, I will submit that and have that data. I took out the micron sample and weighed the raw sample, the total sample. It was 43.1 grams. So then I washed it, and then it weighed 32.4 grams. I pulled out 3 ounces and dyed it, and I have a video in the playlist about that, using Kool-Aid dyes. That's that. So then I split the balance into 3 piles. The first pile was fiber was going to flick, and then spin that on the wheel using the worsted, whatever, short forward draw. The other sample, and these all came out to be 9.8 grams each. The other sample I combed it, and then I spun that on my drop spindle. Then the third piece of it I hand carded on paddle cards, 9.8 ounces, and I spun that on my wheel using my stylus kit. So a long draw, kind of like a great wheel, a quill, whatever, just to kind of add a little variety so that I could push the limits of the samples for the different types of spinning. Because the samples are small, that's pretty much the extent of the different types of spinning and prep that I was going to use. I want to get to the yield here, so I'm going to just talk about that. So I washed the yarns after I made them, and I ended up at a final weight of 24.6. So I lost 18.5 grams from the raw sample to when I actually had yarn, which is a yield of 57.08%. Now this yield number is really important, and I need to explore this a lot further. So it's a good idea to keep track of this. So if you're a person that buys raw fleeces, it's a good idea to keep track of this, because you're buying the fleece at the raw weight, but you're actually enjoying the yarn at the washed spun rate after you've processed it and dealt with all the waste. So the reason the yield is important, a lot of reasons. For me, it's important because yield to me is about when I send raw fleece to the mill. I send, I don't know how many pounds, let me think, 50, maybe 70 pounds this year of raw fiber into the mill. And this year my yield, I did 10 pounds of all the colors, so 50 pounds of comb top, and I can't remember, it might have been 30 pounds I made into roving. And my yield was 35 to 39%. So I pay you pay for the inbound weight. And what you get at the end is what for me, I sell it. That's what I offer to hand spinners. So I want to make my yield as high as possible. How do I do that? Well, number one is I could only submit, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but it'll circle back. I would only submit really good fiber to the mill. Well, I can't do that because my really good fiber, I keep and I sell that to hand spinners as raw fleeces. So that doesn't fit with my strategy of trying to provide hand spinners a really good variety of very high quality wool from our sheep. So that kind of gets that option out. The other thing I could do is not submit, really put a lot of time into sorting the fiber that I do submit to make sure there's no really short bits, stuff that's too dirty. Because when they make comb top, they're really pulling out any excess junk. Here's an example of the bag of waste that comes after taking roving and turning it into comb top. I could breed for, longer fleeces. So the shorter the fleece, more likely it is to fall out in waste, right? So if I could get every fleece to be 3 inches or longer, that could impact my yield. I could explore using different mills. I really like the mill that I use, but that's something that I could do, is to start, calling around to other producers and see what their yields are. I'm not really sure how many people actually look at this carefully because it's not straightforward. All right, so why is this important in a breed study? Okay, it's important because there could be characteristics of the breed that make the final yield lower. So you're not getting as much fiber for what you're spending or the weight that you're bringing in initially. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, I will give you a very specific example. This is, I'm kind of spoiler alert here, but someone sent me, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, a big bag of Polypay, which was awesome. And it's different from the Polypay that I got from the Guild. It's very different quality. So I'm showing you this. You can see that there's about 1 inch of tip here that is extremely compacted. This fleece wasn't coated. Another thing that will impact yield, by the way. And I had a tough time flicking that and combing that out. I only flicked it. Tough time flicking that out, and there was a lot of waste that came off of that. I didn't keep as good a track of the waste on that larger quantity of fiber that I got from a friend, not related to the Guild. I do have the data though, I am not finished with that, so I don't want to get distracted with that, but I am going to calculate that once I get through it. So, yield is important. Again, I can't really talk about the yield of the breed. I'm only going to be talking about the yield of this sample. And the yield of this sample was 56%. Is that what I said? So I have that data, and I will now, I'll keep that 57%. Keep that, and I'll compare that with the other breeds in the study of the samples that we get, just to have that piece of information because it's interesting to me. Okay, so yeah, I did a couple videos quite a while ago, back in April, which I'm relaunching as standalone videos right now, so bear with me, those of you that have already seen them. But after I did that, this friend of mine, her name is Kim, and she has a YouTube channel. It's called Fairly Fiber Fun, and she's a hand spinner. She's a really good teacher. She does a lot of stuff. Generously sent me a large quantity of some Polypay that she had, and it was raw. So I got the pleasure of working with another Polypay sample that was very different from what I got from the Guild. What I want to do now is show you the yarns I made and talk about the process that I used to create them. So this is the yarn I made by flicking the locks from the sample. So I flicked that little tiny quantity, and then I spun it on my Majacraft rose, my 20-year-old vintage rose, using the standard E-flyer, which is good for finer yarns, on a standard bobbin. So not Nothing different than what I normally do. And I do kind of a hybrid short forward draw, and then when I get sick of it, I do kind of like a, I don't know what I call it, a short backward draw, I guess. So I kind of mix them together to get a worsted yarn. And then I plied it just using my Delta Flyer on the rows. The Delta Flyer is nicer for plying because you can, it's easier to thread it, and it can handle larger skeins. I got, let's see here, 7.4 grams from the 9.8 that I started with. So that's partly waste. And so here is the yarn. Really, you know, I got a nice even spin from this. Relatively for me. I'm not really crazy particular about getting a perfect gauge. So one of the things that happened was I washed it in April, I think, or something like that. And it's November right now, so it's almost 6 months. And it sat for quite a while. And when I was drafting, there was quite a bit of stickiness. I don't know if that's because I let it sit or if that's just the characteristic of that sample. But it stuck to itself, so a little difficult to draft. But I was able to get a really, I think, a nice even yarn. If I had to guess the micron count, which I said I'm going to get the actual data on that, I would say it's in the low 30s. So I would not use this for a project, this particular sample, for a project that would require next to skin softness. I think it would be unbearable. I mean, just putting it on my wrist, I can feel, it's not prickly, but it feels kind of rough. The other thing I'll say about it, if I had to describe the character of the fiber, it felt kind of like fiberglass insulation. It had sort of a crunchiness to it. And the parts that weren't sticky were very easy to draft. So I would say that the sample that I received of the Polypay, I think would be really nice for a new spinner if they could get past that stickiness, which that might be my fault that I let it sit for so long. So those would be my observations on the flicked fiber where I did that short forward draw. So then I did drop spindling. And the drop spindled yarn I made with fiber that I combed with my Majacraft 2-pitch combs, which really could have used the single pitch, but I just have 2-pitch, so I used it, and it was fine. And the waist on that, like I said, I started with 9.8. The washed yarn, I ended up with 7.6, so more than I did with the flicked. Then I spindled it, which I'm not a spindler. I would never opt to spindle. I do spindle in, like when I'm doing shows to demonstrate and to teach people how to get started into the craft, but I don't do it for my, if I wanted to make yarn to make something, I would use the wheel. So I just spindled, and I don't have an expensive spindle. My spindle is one I buy from, I can't even tell you who, it's a wholesaler. So it's a fairly inexpensive, but it does the trick. Now in this application using the drop spindle, the stickiness kind of worked to my benefit because I'm not a proficient drop spindler, so I wasn't losing, you know, I wasn't dropping the spindle, and I could draft longer, have a longer drafting zone. So that was kind of nice. The plying, what I did, it didn't, I don't know, I think I lost some yarn because of the way I plied. I put it on the knitting needles, and it just got caught up in the needles. I think I might have not put them through the center hole perfectly. So the plying, I think I could have done a lot better. It was really uneven and bumbly. That's how it turned out. The color is really pretty. It's a nice creamy white. I mean, at this time, I don't notice much of a difference in, you know, non-Shetland white yarn. I'm going to, because I've got quite a lot of other breeds to play around with, so it'll be fun to compare once I get cracking on this. All right, so this is the drop spindle using combed fiber that I used my combs for. I think that's all I wanted to tell you about that. Then I used the paddle cards and took those Rolegs, whatever, fluffy nests, and spun that using the stylus kit on my Majacraft rows onto stylus bobbins, and then I plied those bobbins with a Delta Flyer. I don't think I have video footage of that, but it's okay. So I applied it with the Delta Flyer. I didn't use a drop spindle or the quill for that piece of it. The stickiness worked to my disadvantage because I'm not an expert here, but my experience with long draw is you want your fiber to be very loose and kind of combobulated so that when you're doing the long draw, it's not sliding out of your hands like it would with comb top. You want it to be really disorganized. That's what I have found. Again, I don't ever profess to be an expert at this stuff. And then the other thing is you want to have a good amount of resistance. So when I did the long draw with the stylus kit, I went with a smaller whirl just so that I could get more tension because it was going faster. I don't know if I did that correctly or not, but I wanted more resistance. And what I found was that the stickiness worked to my disadvantage. I was having a really difficult time pulling it. The other thing with the hand cards is you don't get to eliminate dirt and flecks and bits and neps, right? It's all kind of incorporated. You can pick stuff out, but it's not a good cleaning process as you would get with the combs and the flickers. So I left that in there because, I'm just thinking back to the, demonstrations I see at those colonial villages where the girls just take the wool, the women take the wool out of the basket and, there's no combing or whatever. So it's all of the fiber. So my yield was a lot higher, right? It went from 9.8 grams input and output was 9.8 grams. So no loss. But you can see a lot of the tip is still in there. I did rip it out where I could. Little bits of dirt. It's a lot squishier. It's a lot fluffier than the worsted spun. And that was the other thing that I thought was really fun. I love to do this. Or they're all wound up on the same dimension nitty knotty, dried the same way with no weight. Very subtle, but the drop spindled has more scrunch to it, right? It didn't, let me just make sure I'm not cheating here. Make sure it's really even. A little bit more elasticity to it because, I don't know, I guess I spun it quite a lot looser because I'm not a good drop spindler. The stylus, I would say, came in second in terms of elasticity, and then the worsted, it's got some, there's a good amount of crimp with this sample I got. Now you compare that with the sample that I got from my friend Kim. Huge difference because her sample had a lot more crimp in it. So let me just show you that. So what I did with the stuff I got from Kim is I just washed it. I kept some of the raw out. I just did that just because I wanted to have, I don't know why I kept so much out. I'll probably spin this up because I think I might make something with it. Really dirty. However, not a lot of VM. Most of the dirt was on the tips. All right, so this one is the breed study, and this one is the one I got from Kim. More crimp on this one. I am going to send this raw sample up to the lab as well to get micron tested. Which reminds me of another thing I wanted to mention when you're doing a breed study, especially if you get a sample that someone gives you in a bag. It could be, the quality of the fiber could be also impacted by where you got it off of the fleece. So it's possible that this came off the britch, which it would be a little coarser, a little less crimpy, a little longer. And it's possible that this came from the premium portion of the fleece. I don't know, because all I got when I got my sample was a bag like this. This is another breed, but just to show you what I got. So yeah, so this fiber from the Polypay that I got from Kim is really nice. It's probably like 27, 28 micron. It's so I've got another skein that's not washed yet, and then I have all that raw fiber still yet to, I could probably get, I don't know, 100 yards out of that. And I think I'm just going to treat myself and make something. I don't know what yet. I was thinking about making little wristlets, but I don't know if I could. I don't think it's going to be next to Skin Soft. I might just knit like a little cuff just so that I can test it to see how long I can wear it for without having to take it off. But maybe like a vest or something, like a pretty, you know, with cables and Aran type patterns and stuff. I don't know. So I'm kind of, that was really nice of her to send that. She's great. And here's a link to her site and also to her, I'll put the link to her site in my show notes. So the next step in this study is I am going to make stuff. Not sure how it's going to go because I don't have a ton. So I was hoping to get a start on weaving because I'm not a weaver, and I have this cute little thing I got from one of my local fiber people. She's a vendor most of the time at shows and stuff, and I always like to see what she has. But this is a little weaver kit by Shocked, and I was thinking it'd be fun to learn how to use this with one of my samples, but I don't think I have enough. So I don't know what I'm going to do there. Maybe I will just use it for the one direction, and then maybe I'll take some fiber from the demo spinning, because that stuff is textured and crazy and colored, and put it the other way just for the fun of it. In fact, I just decided that that's what I'm going to do. I was going to knit a swatch with the worsted flicked stuff, but I think I'll use that on the weaving kit. Then the stuff that I combed and drop spindled, maybe I'll just make a little swatch with like maybe PP to indicate that it's Polypay in like the reverse, like a garter stitch or something. And if I get enough squares of that, that might be a fun, I don't know, like a quilt to put together or something. Because there's not a lot of fiber here. So I'll make that, and that'll be my next video, is just quickly showing you those things. And then with this charming textured thing, I think I'll make a granny square. Because I don't get to crochet that often. And I've never made granny squares. I've always wanted to, so I think I'm going to do a little granny square with all my samples. So that is the update on the Polypay breed study. There will be one more video, like I said, on the finished items, and then I'm going to start the next breed, which I'm not sure what breed I'm going to do. I could stay with the guild. Here's the other problem is that guild meetings, I try to attend as often as I can. But the problem I have is that being on the farm, there are some Saturdays I just can't get away because the meeting is on Saturday. Or I just have stuff I have to do and I can't break away. So I do want to try and get photographs of other people's creations using those breeds. So we'll see where I end up. The breed I have in here, I'm really interested to try. There's a couple of them. This California Red, a spinner that I know, she's very proficient and has done a lot of stuff. She said that that was really fun. So that might be my next one. I think I also have upstairs, I just got 2 other samples. I think one of them is Romanoff and the other one might be Tunis, but I'm not sure. Anyways, oh, what riches I have here with all these fun things I can do. So thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking with me here to the end. I really appreciate you, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you can come back soon.